we burnt $5,000 in cash in a pizza oven, which now I'm just like, that was atrocious behaviour.
This is a show about the people who make podcasts happen at every stage of the journey and every step of their career. Each week, we speak to someone in the field of podcasting or digital content and go beyond their CV to explore where they've come from, how it made them the person they are today, and where they're going. Hopefully, we'll all come away having learned something. Why? Because this is an amazing industry full of incredible people from all walks of life. Podcasting is new. It's fresh. It's not been institutionalized. Employers don't look for a podcasting degree or 15 years of podcast experience. It's a world where if you've got the skills, you can make it happen. It's exciting, democratic, and hopefully inclusive. And that's what we're here to celebrate, people in podcasting. That said, let's introduce our panel for this week. We've pulled together a group of people at different stages in their careers and different specialties, and we'll be bringing in a guest to hear their stories, get their advice, and maybe offer a little of our own. Joining us this week.
Hello, my name is Sam Datter. I am an executive producer at Lower Street, a podcast production company that is making this People in Podcasting podcast happen. I've been in podcasting for about 6 years now, and in broadcasting for, on and off, close to 20, which is a long time. And that's me.
And I'm Al Booth. I am also working in podcasting, but I began in radio 26 years ago this year. That is old, isn't it? That's really old. Yeah, commercial radio, and then the BBC, and then podcasting now.
And I'm Daria Lawson. I'm a junior producer at Lower Street. I've been working in radio for just a couple years now, and this is my first role in the podcast field, so very exciting.
And occasionally throughout the episode, you'll be hearing from me, Adam Bender. I'm the COO at Lower Street and have a background in finding talent in the industry, inside and out. I'll occasionally pop up to offer reflections on what's discussed and look at how it all ties back to podcasting professionally. So let's get into it.
Our guest this week is Al Booth, podcast and radio producer, TV presenter, and journalist. So, Al, we've had a look at your CV. Why podcasting and radio?
So I just have this memory of being in the back of my mum's car. She used to pick us up from school and it was about a 3-mile journey home. So I was about 8 or something. And she used to listen to Steve Wright in the afternoon on Radio 1. And it just sounded amazing. And he used to play songs and my mum would sing along. And then he had all these characters and it was just so high energy and it was entertaining and it was fun. And me and my mum and my sister used to laugh in the car. And I was like, that sounds like a fun job to do, if that's a job. I don't even know if I knew at the time it was a job, but it stuck with me. And then I used to listen to my local commercial station in Hull called Viking FM. And again, it was just playing pop music and talking in between and occasionally saying something that would make people laugh. And I just really wanted to do that. And I had an office job at the time because I didn't get straight into radio from school. Had an office job I was terrible at because it was roof estimating where your 2 skills need to be art and maths. But they didn't ask for a CV. They just went, can you do art and maths? And I went, yeah. I was awful, terrible. But it had a fax machine and I could listen to the radio. So I faxed the afternoon presenter a joke. And he phoned me up and asked if I wanted to write for him. And I used to write in my lunch hour, gags and topical gags and different things. And then he got the breakfast show and asked if I wanted to produce. So I got into that. So that was 98. And I did radio, commercial radio, and then joined the BBC to do radio in 2017. So I did that, 2017, until the pandemic. And I was freelancing around the Midlands. The pandemic came, there was no work. And then I saw online a job advert came up for a podcast producer. And I looked at it all. And I've loved podcasting since about 2010. I started listening, probably, was the first one.
Was it Ricky Gervais?
It might have been, yeah, it was. Yes.
If it's 2010 and you're British, it was probably Carl Pilkington, Steve Merchant, Ricky Gervais.
It was. And then there was a true crime one. I can't remember what it was. But yeah, I was listening to all that. And Hamish and Andy, these 2 Australian radio presenters who were brilliant. I used to listen to theirs. So podcasting was, something I'd loved, but not really thought about until the pandemic came and then a job advert went up and I thought, that's kind of matches my skill set to a degree. And I did that, and that's how I got into podcasting 3 years ago, that was.
It might sound like Al stumbled into his journey in podcasting, but in reality, it's an experience shared by many of us who have found themselves in this field. Podcasting is a relatively new medium, and it's attracted individuals with backgrounds in entertainment, broadcasting, and communications who are eager to try their hand at something new. It was subtle, but Al made a point when he mentioned that he saw a job advert that sort of matched his skill set. Al took the leap and he went for it. This attitude of taking a chance, even if it isn't the perfect fit, is a valuable one to adopt if you're thinking about getting your start in the field. Podcasting is a field where we're all still navigating, and behind its polished exterior, there's still a sense of exploration. Those with skill sets from older media like print or broadcasting still have plenty of wisdom and insight that cross over. So if you stumble into a role that piques your interest, it's totally worth giving things a try, even if they don't align perfectly with your previous experiences.
So I'd love to know, Al, local radio finds its kicks where it can. What are some of the strangest things that have happened in your career? Or some of the, at least the most memorable?
There's something that at the time I didn't really think about. I thought it was really cool. And now, because I'm older, I look back and cringe a little bit. There was a station called Galaxy, which is now Capital. And we did a competition called Bank It or Burn It, where someone could win £5,000. And the twist was you'd enter to get this money, and then it would go to a people vote. So you could have £5,000, or if people voted against you for the reason you wanted, we would burn the cash in a pizza oven. And
well, that's a cruel popularity contest.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. It was of its time, I think.
Oh, so it's very 90s, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was early 2000s. It was a girl called Angela, a woman called Angela, wanted a boob job. And yeah, listeners phoned in and voted, and obviously just wanted to burn the money. So we burnt $5,000 in cash in a pizza oven in the mailbox in Birmingham, which now I'm just like, that was atrocious behaviour.
A radio station will burn £5,000 worth of cash and then wonder why it has to sell out to a national conglomerate.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. The other one, I think, was commentating on a plastic duck race on the River Trent. There's two bridges. It's called the Riverside Festival. You bought a plastic duck. They all were put on this banner. The banner was dropped. The ducks would race up the river, which is brilliant. As a spectator sport, it's probably quite good. As a commentary, and they're all yellow ducks, and you can't see numbers or anything. You just go, oh, the yellow one's in the lead. But as it turns out, when you can see them, you're still only going, oh, the yellow one's in the lead.
How long was this duck race?
I was going to say it's very slow. It took about 20 odd minutes. It was just...
Great radio.
Excruciating, yeah. So you worked local radio, Sam. What was the weirdest thing you did?
Well, I'll tell you what, it wasn't so much the weirdest thing I did, but the weirdest thing that happened whilst I was on local radio is I did a very serious news package about traffic on a junction in Kent, and the guest was a woman whose son had been killed crossing the road. So very serious story. And I wrote the intro to it, wrote the news package, blah, blah, blah. It was going to go out on the breakfast show. And the morning producer didn't fully listen to the package and didn't realise that it was a package about death on the road. And he thought it was a bit too serious. So he changed the intro and then stuck Madness's I Like Driving in My Car underneath it without listening to the whole thing.
Oh, no.
And then played it out on the breakfast show. And I very nearly got fired. I was like, hang on, whoa.
Oh, no way.
So that was the strangest bollocking I ever got.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was a bad one.
How do you feel like those really strange experiences, what impression did they give you looking back on them now and where you've progressed?
Yeah.
How do you reflect on those experiences?
Just weird. It's not proper work, is it, that? But in terms of whether commentating on a duck race set me up for my future career, they're just anecdotes, aren't they, really? I think they're just stories. I'm far better, I think, at listening to people's stories than I am at telling them, which is why, the BBC was great for that. And podcasting is great for that. That's what I absolutely love about podcasting, is that you have the breadth there for people to come on, and very rarely is it live. You've got all the time in the world to just hear someone's story and sort of tease it out of them and stuff. So, yeah, maybe I guess that's it. It's kind of, you look back and think, well, I've got all these anecdotes. Everyone's got a story. That's the thing. And those are outlandish, if you just reeled off stories like that all the time, you'd be a pub bore, wouldn't you, really?
So it's clear there's been somewhat of a shift in the style of entertainment since the early days of broadcasting and modernized podcast production. As Al pointed out, it's easy to dismiss these stories as silly anecdotes. I mean, they are silly anecdotes, but they still hold a ton of value. Making something out of the content that you've got. Thinking outside of the box when it comes to entertaining an audience. And the most crucial piece of career advice in the media industry, embracing the power of storytelling. In journalism and communications, we're basically working to become exceptional storytellers. What sets apart a good storyteller from a great one is their ability to transform any story into a captivating and engaging one. In the media industry, we hear a lot of everyone has a story, and it's true. But the real magic lies in our ability to harness the potential of these stories. Meaning not only the ones that appear inherently fascinating, but also those that may seem ordinary or trivial. Like a rubber duck race.
Is there any learning from that you think has influenced you in podcasting and in terms of how you tell those stories, how you make a story interesting, how you tease that story out and create something from people?
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I think in terms of coming into podcasting and storytelling, it's just knowing that audience, isn't it? It's kind of knowing who you're talking to and then knowing the language that you're going to use for it, not overthinking it, but just in terms of, scripting and the kind of material, I guess. Yeah, the material you go. So if someone comes on and you're doing a story, that is about helping elderly people in care homes or something, and someone comes on and tells a story about rock and roll excess, it's probably not the right guest for that podcast, one would say. But I think that is the thing with podcasting, like I say, it's the length, isn't it? Certainly in BBC, the interviews are probably 5 minutes or something. And you get really good guests and there's a really good backstory and there's a reason they're on there. And they, more often than not, come off and say, well, that was quick. And, there's the backstory behind it. There's the reason they're there to tell. There's kind of side stories off that. And just natural questions you want to ask yourself and find out more about. I think that's the great thing about podcasting. And like I say, that was something when I was at the BBC and then we started paying more attention to podcasts, was like, it'd be great if we could do offshoots of these interviews, longer ones, or you do an interview that had to be really cut down. I interviewed Baroness Lawrence, Stephen Lawrence's mum.
Wow.
She was incredible. I was really quite nervous because she's this powerhouse. She changed UK law. She was an incredible woman. And it was at the opening of the Stephen Lawrence Centre at De Montfort University in Leicester. And she came, and it's just really emotional thing. It's got his trainers are in there. It's got he was a training to be an architect. It's got his designs there. It's all orange because that was his favourite colour. And I sat down with her just with the tape recorder and had a few questions prepped, but yeah, she was just really quite warm. And then, so we talked about the centre, talked about what it meant. And then it was just like, she's just a woman, She's not just a woman, but she is just a woman. And I said that, you're a mum, we know that, but you're a grandma as well. You talk about this, are you aware of the effect that you have on society, but how does it affect you day to day? And she was like, I'm Doreen. I go to the shops. People say, hi, Doreen, and it's a huge part of my life, but it's not all my life. And then we just chatted and she was really funny and she was really warm. And it was a great 40-minute interview, I think it was in the end. And then it went on air on the next morning and we had to get it down to 5 minutes. And you think, there's loads that just wasn't in there. So I think that's the thing with podcasting, you wouldn't think twice about putting that out as an entire podcast now.
Obviously, it was exciting to you to be able to utilize long form content more, going from radio to podcasting. But I imagine there's also a lot of challenges you faced adjusting from radio to podcasting. Could you tell us about, just what that experience was like?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing in radio, it seems that, you do the edit and there might be some mouth clicks in, and people go, compression takes care of that. So for the BBC in particular, you go away and make a package and just put the music in, put the sound effects where need, the wild track underneath it and just the voices. and then that's it, upload it. And then anything else, the compression, the airwaves, the magic, takes care of that. With podcasting, I came in, and I remember the first one I did, I saw this interview between the presenter and a guest, and then sent it off, went, here you go. And they went, oh, there's a lot of plosives in there. There's mouth clicks. You need to de-ess it. And I was like, what? I don't. And that's probably even now, that's still something, because I'm not a technician. I think you have to, it depends where you are and who you're working with, but you have to wear many hats in podcasting that you don't necessarily have to do in radio. But it's all learning, and I like that. But and certainly with podcast, you're as much an engineer really as you are a writer and an interviewer, because you probably have to do pre-interviews quite often, a researcher. It's more all-encompassing. Can I jump in? I know this is taking us off kilter, because this is kind of going right back to the start, but asking that question about what made me want to do what I do, can I ask you to that? Because I'm always really interested in how that first acorn formed and then how it's brought you to where you are.
Yeah, what brought me into podcasting? So similar to you, it was radio, but before that, it was just music. And I just really enjoyed music in my teenage years, like most of us do. And I knew the power that music could have on people individually. And so I also thought at the time, the dream job is just being able to listen to music all day. And where do you do that? At a radio station. So that was my original intentions. And then sort of as I got into school in communications, just realizing that podcasting and conveying a story or theme or message through audio in the same way that you can through music, I thought you could have a similar effect. And that really spiked my interest. I wanted to figure out how to be able to tell these meaningful stories in a similar way that has a similar impact on people that music does.
Yeah. What about you, Sam?
So I started off on student radio, but that was just kind of a hobby. And I did a show with a girl that I fancied, and that's how I got into it. I had no huge interest before that, if I'm completely honest, but I did want to be a war correspondent when I was younger. And I went to university, I studied Middle Eastern history and Arabic with the dream of one day going out to the Middle East and becoming a journalist out there. And I did spend, before the Civil War, a few months in Syria and spent quite a bit of time out in the Middle East. But then the radio thing I thought would be a nice bit on the side and hopefully would impress said girl, which it never did. But off the side of that, I started doing stand-up comedy. So I was doing a bit of research for a film production company on the side for an upcoming documentary they were doing. And they happened to be in the audience for this show, this comedy competition that I won. It was the only one I ever won. I was a pretty bad comedian. But they gave me a presenting gig off that. And I was incredibly lucky. I managed to travel around Central and South Asia for 9 months presenting a TV documentary, which was insane and awesome and incredibly stressful, incredibly rewarding. But I came back and just wanted to tell stories. The amazing people I've met along the way, I just wanted to hear about them and learn about them and carry on doing that. So I got into journalism, abandoned hope of going to the Middle East. And all through this was kind of missing the history side, kind of missing the degree that I'd once done, and missing comedy as well. And journalism doesn't always allow a huge amount of space for humour and levity. So I started a history podcast with a friend, a comedy history podcast. We did 120 odd episodes and it did quite well. We had an amazingly engaged fan base who, would send us fan art that they'd drawn, would send us snacks, did a whole load of weird and wonderful things. And I just realised that podcasting was this amazing medium to connect with people in a way that was otherwise really difficult, because TV and radio, I absolutely love them, but they're very apersonal. You don't have really a connection with the audience. You have audience phone-ins in radio, and that's great, but it's kind of a one and done thing. Whereas podcasting being more on demand, and you've got that flexibility to be long form, you can talk to your audience. Like we would read all the feedback in our podcast, whether it was good or bad. But just that ability to not just build an audience, but build a really close audience and feel like you were part of a little community. Yeah. And frankly, stroking the ego, being the king of your little community, building it around you and what you wanted to make, I thought was really awesome. Really, really awesome. So I actually dropped out of my job at the BBC at the time and started my own podcast production company, which lasted until COVID, when we went under, as many did, and then have slowly found my way back into the industry that way, taking a more traditional career route up. But I love it. Much like you guys, I love hearing stories and listening to stories and hopefully teasing stories out of people. It's a lot of fun.
It's also cheating because you're getting free education as well.
Yeah, right.
Great point.
You learn so much that otherwise you'd have to pay a fortune to go on a university course.
Yeah.
Al, what kind of advice would you give to people that are looking to join the industry?
Do you know what? It's really interesting what you said at the beginning, which I'm going to reflect back on that. In your intro, when you said that podcasting isn't institutionalized yet, which is, one of the big things they say about the BBC. For obvious reasons, it's been around 100 years or whatever. But that's the thing. It's so fresh and it's so full of new people coming in and different experiences. It just feels like a real community, not necessarily just with the company you're working with, but just I think there's people making different discoveries. Everyone's so passionate about it. Everyone's got their own thought process of how it should be done, but are really open to different ways of discussing it. So if you're coming into it, whether you're coming in brand new or you're coming in from radio, I would just say that. I would say utilize the community. First and foremost, listen to podcasts, get a feel for what sort of area you might want to work in. Like we all say here, we'd love stories and storytelling. There's so many different areas, different types of podcasts, which aren't just about people's stories. So find that out, try and pursue those, but just make contacts because everyone's approachable and reachable, really, I would say. And the other thing I would definitely say, you don't just have to work on a podcast that has a celebrity attached. That's because I don't know about you guys, you probably have the same thing when you say, I work in podcasting, people say, oh, which one? And it's like, no, it's not. There are more than 20 podcasts and not all of them have people from Love Island on. So,
It's true. The podcasting space is vast and wide. Sometimes it seems like a smaller industry than it is because it's overshadowed by a few giants, but really, it's a vibrant and diverse space, similar to music and movie industries. There's countless genres and categories to explore, and the vastness extends to the community as well. The podcasting community is open and approachable with plenty of opportunities to connect and learn from others. So if you're interested in podcasting, don't hesitate to get involved and make those contacts. Remember, it's not about being a perfect fit or working on a podcast with a famous name attached. The industry offers a multitude of roles and opportunities for individuals from all backgrounds and levels of experience. Embrace the vastness and the diversity and be open to different experiences and perspectives. And on the note of vastness and opportunity, let's hear from Al what category or genre he might like to delve into next.
The podcast that sticks in my mind is a podcast called S-Town, which was, I don't know, there's a 6-part or something. I'd love to be able to tell a story over a series, I think. But also, the first podcast I worked on, given the fact that I've been presenting for 2.5 decades, it was for a girls' school group, and the presenter was a teacher, but had never presented anything. It was just a case of coaching. I didn't realise I was getting into it for that. The end of a sentence on a script, don't throw it away. It's inflection, it's presentation, pausing is fine, don't be scared of pauses and all that. And just seeing her confidence grow as an interviewer, I visibly welled up. And I was like, you've come on so far. But it was brilliant because it was her confidence had grown so much as well. So I'd like to do more of that, I think. I'd like to get into some sort of coaching element and just say, it's okay, you don't have to be nervous, you're fine. Nobody dies. Podcasting, nobody dies. But if they do, make a series out of it. And can I work on it?
Well, that brings us to the end of the episode. Thanks so much to our panel, Al Booth, Daria Lawson, and Sam Datapalin. I've been Adam Bender, and if you'd like to join us on People in Podcasting, just email sam@lowerstreet.co. That's just .co, and let us know. Or if you want to hear more about this amazing industry without getting in front of the microphone, subscribe on your app of choice so you don't miss out. People in Podcasting is a Lower Street production. We're making this to help provide a service to the industry and celebrate the people who make it what it is. And what we make is podcasts for brands. Get in touch if you'd like to know more about us or our services, and we'll see you next time.